The Kick is for an adult audience. The Kick may contain certain material that may be unsuitable for sensitive ears. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey, I'm not saying they're stupid. I like China.
Well, $15 an hour, first of all, as we said, it's not enough of a wage. That is why we have to also talk about taxing the super wealthy and big corporations.
Our president doesn't have a clue. He's a bad negotiator.
Institutions across America over history feels offended. We should acknowledge that politically incorrect and being racist.
They literally just fired a white guy for being a white guy.
This is a blame the victim situation. We should be ridding the world of bigotry. We should be talking about that rather than blaming it on the victim who feels hurt.
You tell me, Namiki, whether we are training these kids to be little cupcakes who never have to encounter anything offensive, or whether it's better to educate them that there are offensive things in life, and you have to deal with that in life.
News, politics, and discussion. This is The Kick.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll come like a wall.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, The Kick is back after a week off. Taking a break, calming, simmering the nerves.
Simmer down.
It's the Longbox.FM studios, brought to you as always by Riley's Brewing.
Serenity now.
And we're doing a little bit, we added stuff this week, so there will be people tuning in on the Facebook Live page, which I've figured out how to merge everything. So you can find us on YouTube and Facebook and all that fun stuff. And we even changed cameras around today for the more personal touch.
I see my own face finally.
I know, I was looking at that.
Is it a mistake?
That's I'll take it. I don't have to look at it though.
So anyways, as always, you guys can hit us up tonight at 492-0450, or if you're chatting in any room, go ahead and give us the conversation. We'll integrate that into the shows as well.
Promise to scream and swear at you.
That's actually encouraged. So
yeah, we really
don't feel like you're intruding on our show.
Yeah, we do want outside voices and opinions on this for sure. Now, going around the table, we got Kevin as always here.
That's me.
And then we brought in Vic for tonight.
I hit the microphone. What a rookie move.
This is why you're still a rookie.
Gangbang rookie.
And we got Ben just hanging out in the background tonight. This is part of the getting back to normal and everything. There'll be some changes. We're doing a special show on Thursday night with Jeff Thurman coming in, the whole Kick crew, kind of going over the BLM and newer things happening. But tonight we're finishing up the trilogy, and by seeing some of the numbers, it looks like you've seen it. The first two episodes,
the build up,
both broken up at some point near the end of the show, or an early ending, if you will, some heatedness, and we've been working our best to try to patch that up, move on, understanding that this show is a tough show to do.
Yeah, this is the uphill show. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, this is us. We got to sell you our content, and it's a little bit different from the other shows. We're going to kind of go freeform, and that's what I'm assuming Kevin's kind of goal, and it's kind of what Kevin kind of always wanted to do, and we're going to see if we can make it entertaining. So it kind of feels like an uphill battle, but I'm sure if you're interested, and if you're interested enough to be listening right now, we're going to try to make this as entertaining. I mean, because the subject matter, I know it seems dull at times, but it is a real interesting story. Like, if we were to put this to film, people would pay to go see it. It's a pretty good story.
It's a long one, though.
Yeah, it's long, and it's it's like the Lord of the Rings. You got to commit fucking 12 hours of your life to getting it thoroughly.
A couple dozen times.
Yeah.
No, this third show hopefully is the porridge that is just right. Part of it is just to try to clear the air, because I realize that we never really established kind of foundational principles of where Alan and I'm sure Vic, are coming from on a lot of our stances. And Dowdy, and I'm just going to use you as kind of a representative survey for a lot of people.
You're going to be our
you tend to respond
in the way
like the same way a lot of other people do, and it's something that.
So I should be walking out of the room here in about an hour and a half.
No, but when you counter us, you will be a good representative of what we typically encounter.
There you go.
In our trying to get forth this message, and it's one that's. To be honest, I listened to both shows, and Alan's pretty grim on his view of what's going to happen. And to be honest, it is sort of that grim, but there is kind of a silver lining. but it's a very long shot, and that's why we do what we do, because as much as we could possibly save ourselves from that catastrophe, the chances of it happening are very slim. And every person who preaches this message understands that. And so our position, and Alan takes this to a bit of an extreme, our position is kind of like defeatist. Like, you either going to understand what I'm trying to tell you, or fuck it, I can't spend this time.
Don't have the resources.
I don't have the physical, mental,
Well, no, every time
emotional resources to keep batting my head against a brick wall.
Every time you guys we have this conversation not only on air but off air, and usually when we hang out, this is what it ends up being anyways. You guys have all your very hardcore, like the base level understanding of government and what it should be or shouldn't be. But you guys are talking about the end of times, basically, with how mathematically everything is getting to this point, that type of stuff. But there's never anything about how do we get around it, how do we come out of it. It's just we're all going to die. And it gets me to the point, it's like, well, should I just put my head in the sand and say, fuck it, ass up in the air and take it?
Well, there is a silver lining, but it's a very small one.
Yeah, so why not kill myself now?
But
save the trouble.
The better thing to do is prepare for the fact, or the very good chance that silver lining isn't going to happen. You can always aim for it and hope to try to spread this message, and enough people understand it enough to do something about it. But at the rate at which people receive this message, it's not likely that that's going to happen. But the best you should do is prepare yourself for it, and hopefully it's not going to be as bad as some people who are like apocalypse nuts might think it might be, like people on the street just stabbing each other for meat.
Part of this show is to just finally hammer through this thing as hard as it's been. And already, Alan's popping up on the YouTube page saying we never had a chance to go over the founding principles. So you guys might as well lay it all out.
So here's how I've kind of put it together. I'll try to make this as brief a summary as I can. So the underlying foundation of, we'll take two positions, the anarchist position and the minarchist. I'm sure a lot of people have heard the term anarchist, of course, and by this point it's been so distorted that
it's become punk rock. What it is.
I'll say what the definition is, but it doesn't matter. It's already struck enough chords with people to make up their own minds. But anarchy is basically no rulers. It recognizes the state as being an immoral entity and having no authoritative judicial ability to claim
to regulate
man. Basically is the bottom line there. The minarchist position is that government is necessary at the absolute extreme minimum you can possibly get it. So they base it down constitutionally to protecting the rights of
they
the
believe in a
citizens.
Constitution, in essence.
Yeah.
That there should be some central authority, but it's very restricted and very small and limited in its scope. I just said three ways of saying the same thing.
There
very
it is.
small and very clearly defined.
Yeah. And so the philosophical foundation that I've been introduced to through Stefan Molyneux, he puts it he describes it as the non-aggression principle. And Dowdy, I've hit you with this. I don't know if I've broken this down to you or not. I have. Okay, so the breakdown is this. Nobody has a right to initiate force against anybody who's not currently threatening or forcing action or violence against you.
Their property.
Property
is a very important word here.
Okay, so we'll property. Nobody has that right to initiate against you. You do not have that right to initiate force against anybody who isn't threatening you or damage your property, all that good stuff.
Because when you punch someone, you're damaging property because you are your own property. And when someone damages that property, they've damaged property that's not theirs.
So the third leg of this is the powers of the government under the Constitution states that its granted authority comes from those that created the government. So the people create the government. The people give the privilege for the government to utilize the rights that the people have granted it. If nobody has the right to initiate force, how is it possible to grant a state that privilege when there was no right to have it derived from to begin with? So that is the underlying philosophical question.
I get you, Kevin, but you have unwittingly ignored both the concept of property, right, and privilege. You know what I mean? Those are like three concepts. To be able to make full sense of what you're saying right now, you have to understand those other concepts. Which...
Lay them out.
Because, well... I'm going to try to make this entertaining, so I'm going to kind of tell it as a story. This is straight off of the YouTube video. All right, so you own your property, and on your property, there's a lake. And all your neighbors don't have lakes. But it's your property, you paid for it, and it's supposed to be, your property, and only you can decide what happens to it. But all your neighbors come and they decide that they need water from your lake. And you go, well, it's going to cost this much, this much, this much. And if you're even willing to, you can just say no, because it's my property. And I get to decide what happens with it. Just like you get to decide with a lot of things that you believe are your property. Your TV, if you want to go throw a fucking hammer through it, you can do that. It's your property. You fucking paid for it. It's yours. And so we float around with this concept of property in our minds that is incongruent to the way we act about property in our daily lives. Because the truth of the matter is, when something is your property, nobody can tell you what you can or cannot do with it. It's yours. And if somebody else has a claim to it, they better prove it. And if they can't, then that's why property possession, it's 9/10 of the law. It's my property. I have it. You say it's yours, you're going to have to really prove that shit. Regardless. So, I go back to the lake example. Now, what if all the neighbors decide that they're going to put it to a vote and vote for whether we get John's water from his lake? And you get 10 other neighbors, and you all vote, and what do you know, John? We all voted that your lake's going to be split up between us, and we're going to get water from your property, and we're just going to take it from you because we are more than you, and we're just going to take it by democracy. And this is what democracy is. It's the tyranny of the majority. Yeah. And so if you give in to this idea that the majority can vote away your property, then you fucked up. Because now nothing is yours. And the truth of it is, at this point in time, everything that you think you own is property of the government, which is why they can tell you what you can and cannot do with every fucking thing. Because in truth, it's their property, and you've signed it away. The U.S., when it was founded, because the way it used to work is there used to be kings, and the kings owned the land. So anything that happened within that kingdom was subject to his fucking whim. If he wanted to make wearing red illegal, you fucking don't wear red or you hang. Because it's his property. And these ideas of property have went down for ages through mankind. Subjects. And America, when it was founded, was one of the first places in the history of mankind to say, it is not just the king who owns everything, but every single person within a nation can be their own property owners. And they can have this thing that only kings used to have. Every man now is a king. And you have this thing called property. And we wrote a constitution that protected that property from ever being infringed from us. It was our inheritance. It was the thing that was to be saved for every descendant afterwards. But we entrusted that trust, like as if you had $1 million and you wanted to make sure your children got it, and you give it to a corporation. You say, hold on to this $1 million, and if I die, give it to my children when they're 20. And then your child turns 20 and there's no fucking money there. That's where we're at. There is no money there. We don't have property. Everything that our country used to stand for, we no longer stand for. In fact, we stand for the opposite. And so...
I've trailed a little bit. We've trailed off a little bit. Because you were talking about...
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I get on a fucking train and I just keep going.
There's so much here.
I know. I'm sorry.
Bear with us.
It's a lot of shit, but it's a good story.
Dowdy or Ben, do you guys have any questions so far? Is anything disagreeing with you, or?
I have no microphones.
Oh yeah, you can grab that one.
There you go.
Well, let me
Big squeaky one.
Yeah, get it to the right place, and then all right.
Hello.
There you go.
There you are.
No, not so far, but thank you for allowing me a microphone.
For sure.
I will when I...
Yeah. I muted you.
Sorry.
Well, okay, so Alan brought up the principles. I talked about the anarchy, the minarchist, and...
when you have property, you have rights. It means, so you have the right. Nobody can tell you what you can or cannot do. That's what means to be something to be a right. When someone has property and they want you to use it and you ask to use someone else's property, the person whose property it is gets to tell you how you can use it. And you've been granted a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this came from me describing the NAP.
Yeah.
And the terminology I was using.
Yeah. An anarchist believes entirely in individuals, no government, and property. But a minarchist believes that there should be a small government that protects that right from other people, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm more of a minarchist.
I've also been leaning more that way, and it's out of a it's more of a pragmatic need, really. I don't know how well.
Yeah,
I've got a foot in both camps, and that's to say that is.
I'm sorry to
contradictory.
derail that. Go ahead and continue with your topics. I felt like I
No, I was breaking down the philosophy behind these two different, and they really are. It's kind of where that line in the sand is. Anarchists are definitely in their own camp, and this camp is very well defined by this adherence to being a sovereign individual, that there is no authority greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And you really can't hold feet in both camps.
No.
And I subscribe, I fall back on the philosophy of the NAP, except I don't know how to bridge that gap between the philosophy and the application. So this is where I say that I have a foot in the minarchist camp, because they are the closest. However, they still are in violation of the NAP.
I get you.
So this is where my conflict lands.
Just so you know, real quick, we did. I don't want to ignore it. We did get a question actually from Amber Flores. Want to know what can be done to get more people the message, and that was 10 minutes ago. But that was the start of the show. Was message, and so that was her question.
The fact that she just asked us that question is what we're doing to spread this message.
Yeah, actually, I would say make it a personal objective of yours to kind of look into certain subjects that would normally be disinteresting to you, but things that are very important to every aspect of your life. And one of the biggest ones I could say is economics, but it's the dismal science, and it's boring, but it's not. And the history alone of economics is so interesting that I feel like I could bore you for 30 minutes on the history of economics.
Let's not do that yet.
But I'm not going to do that.
You guys are real big on...
I would say just find an interest. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Start with Ludwig von Mises.
No, don't start with him.
Okay, don't start with him.
Well, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, it was... You guys have these core principles you're talking about, this message you're talking about. You go into the long-winded things about economics, about the basis of the meanings of words. I'm not hearing anything that involves human nature and current world scenarios. This is more like learning about Jesus Christ from some certain temple that has a certain way, and you have to do it this way or you're a bad Christian or bad...
Well, it is kind of a gospel. It really is. And that's the thing, is we're trying to proselytize everybody, and we want to convert you. And that's the thing, is we get tied up with the same nuts. And I know what's crazy, Kevin, and I know you might feel this, is that I know I always felt like, God, I must seem like that crazy guy on the street corner with his bullhorn, screaming about Jesus to people, because to that guy, he's 100% sure. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But we seem crazy like that, and you kind of get past that, I guess, unless you just burn yourself out. But yeah, I know it does feel like
Amber
that.
had a follow up. Do we start with the youth or try to change adults' minds?
Both.
I would change the way you live. Change the way you live and try to change the minds of the people who live around you.
Yeah.
For my question, is there any understanding of the world that is currently around you, and is there any blend between what you guys want to achieve and what is actually here right now? A realistic way to make things work better?
Okay.
Or is it just your way or the highway?
So I'll say...
No, it's not even my way.
I'll say honestly that I see where the country is now, and it's been in a pretty harsh decline the last couple of decades. Of course, I've only been around the last couple of decades.
It's always been. Yeah.
If anybody here and people online can think of one positive thing the government has done legitimately, just a challenge. I've been thinking about it. Someone throw it out there.
They let gays marry gays. You know what I mean? The Supreme Court. That's a
There you go.
positive thing. But
Ding, ding, ding.
even then, ding, ding, ding. They shouldn't even be regulating. They shouldn't even be deciding that.
I would go back
and
with
that's
that
the
too.
bottom line. Yeah.
What I was going to say is, as far as finding solutions where we are today, I honestly believe we're past that point. The thing is, when Vic and I go into these long-winded things, there are so many tangents, and there's so many reasons. Like, we start to say something, and
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, and we'd love to explain why. We're talking chapters upon notes upon footnotes upon.
Well, I'll say
endless.
this: like, I didn't come here tonight and I didn't know what we were going to talk about, and then look that shit up to come with a bunch of facts about it to try to sound smart about it. I have just a general interest in a lot of things. In some areas it's deeper than others, but I have a shallow, widespread net of just crazy interests. And I can listen to, books on tape about economics, and I find it extremely interesting, and it changes the way you look at the rest of your life. When you read, and some of the things that I've read, you go out in the world and you experience the world like the second time you watched Fight Club.
Yeah.
And you go, oh,
that's why.
I see. And it's a completely different experience, and it's hard to see other people living the other way. And that is, I know it just makes me sound like a dick, like, oh, you're fucking better than me. But it's not outside the grasp of every person. And or else I wouldn't say this shit. I wouldn't give a shit.
Dowdy, I'll
by the way,
go back to
Alan's response on that too was what could possibly be more realistic than demonstrating to everyone not to harm. That's what you do in the real world to show you that it works.
Yeah, you live the example is really what it is. But what she was saying as far as today's world and trying to help fix and change things today, I think we are off the cliff already as far as we're at a point where we can't turn around and continue.
Financially we are.
The status quo is going to end because it's built upon a foundation of corruption and immorality. And whether it started like that or it became that is
it's a reflection
debatable.
of the society. And look at society.
Hang on. Whether it started like that or it became that is debatable. It's not debatable that that's where we are now. That we've had a government for a long time that does not have the best interests of the people in its mind. So as far as doing stuff that can help today, it's not about helping the country anymore. It's about going back to the foundation of yourself and becoming as independent as possible. In the immediate future, like in the next couple months kind of thing, I've always advocated that you get yourself as many supplies as you can and, as much as you can to be mobile with. And hopefully you don't reach that point, but it's happened in the past, even in this country and in other countries historically, who have gone through very similar, almost identical economic situations that we have. The politics and the names were different, but the game has been very, 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 very much the same. Go ahead, Vic.
Yeah, and I would say this, and Alan was here a while ago, and he would like to believe that it's all going to fall apart tomorrow. And as much as that's kind of like an over-exaggeration, the truth is not far off in that you can look at the history of nations that have done things like go to a fiat currency and completely debase their currency. And you can look historically through the time periods at which it took for the collapse to happen. And on average, we're about right when it should collapse. But the truth is we're talking about, hundreds of
wealthiest
years.
nation.
So there's a range of probably 20 years. So it could happen literally probably tomorrow or 20 years from now. What's not debatable is whether it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We're past the point that really nothing's going to happen unless a lot of people wake up and change things. But all the best we can do is make the impact of it less severe.
Yeah. The way it ends at this point, the fiat currency, the Federal Reserve stuff, is for it to crash. For the crash not to hurt people, they have to be as much off the system as possible.
Yeah, it's like 2007, 2006. Yeah.
Except
It's
on a
that
global scale.
On a global scale.
Go ahead, Daddy.
Amber again on the internet says, doesn't matter, but doesn't every so many years we hit a point where it's the worst or people think that we'll never come back from it? She brought up Depression era, Dust Bowl. She said, do you feel that we never came back from those?
The Dust Bowl was an agricultural thing. They didn't know that they shouldn't farm as long as they should farm, and they dried out the soil, and it's fucking plains.
The other thing, and this was brought up by actually Mama Dowdy, the Kondrativ wave. It's something from Russian scholar guy, something, but basically saying that every generation there's a wave that goes up, and right now they're talking that the millennials are the hero generation. Which, let that soak in. But that every generation has its ups and downs, and it's gone on a scale, just like societies, governments, all that there's always waves, ups and downs, but that there's a thought that the last generation or so has been extending things falsely, and I would say...
Yeah, this is the banking system.
Yeah.
And the truth
That
is,
is
they've been running
slowing it
this
down.
scam since before Jesus.
Yeah. Well, isn't it possible that we're just... Okay, the crash you're talking about is just another one of those. We'll hit a valley, and then the peak comes.
The difference is this time, like the Great Depression, for example, is the severity.
scope.
We have the dollar backs global economies, obviously across the globe. So the dollar is what's being used as the reserve for every other currency, minus like 5 or 6 countries that don't have a Federal Reserve. Iran's one of them. North Korea, all the ones that
all the ones we bomb.
Yeah, we're pretty much going to war at are the ones that don't have Federal Reserves.
Our influence.
When the dollar bottoms out, meaning like it's already lost 98% of its value since 1913, when that last 2% disappears because it keeps on getting inflated and you keep squeezing those last little bits out.
Well, it's even more. Yeah.
You have all these other economies across the world that are relying on the dollar being solid, and it ain't, and so they're going to crash. You instead, in the Great Depression era, it was us. And then people in Europe and so stockholders here and there, but it was limited to us. Our economy was the one that suffered, minus a little bit here and there from other countries who were invested. But you didn't have a crash in other countries like you did with us.
The thing is, the scope keeps getting more and more severe as the world gets smaller and smaller. So the scope of this, and it's a cycle because it's a scam. It's like it's a pyramid scheme that eventually will always go bust. And it's always gone bust throughout history. And yes, they're like waves because they can be predicted.
You guys never...
But this is the
get
biggest.
me on this, like, I don't believe you here that there's a bad thing called the banking system and bad people in government, that peaks and valleys exist. You guys never have me going, well, no, that's not true.
Okay.
I'm in it, but everything you guys say, there's no out of it. There's no thinking how to soften the blow. No way to walk away from it.
Okay, here's what you do. You have competing currencies.
There's no Kenny Rogers here. There's
you don't try to outlaw things like Bitcoin. You allow other things to be used as currency. And even Bitcoin's kind of sketchy because it's not an actual. They found a way to digitally create gold.
That was where I was going.
We're using complex algorithms.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm saying is that's where I was going. Does money matter? Because when things go bad, money becomes something different.
It's like when you're dying and you need more blood. If you want to survive, you're going to need to get more blood. You're going to need to get different money, different types of money, and have actual competition. Have a market for money, not the Federal Reserve printing every dollar pretty much in existence.
Yeah, we haven't laid this out either. The big issue that faces the country and the world is the control of the money supply, of the interest rates. Once somebody is able to control how much the money is worth, they determine
whether you can buy a car next year.
Yeah,
or whether you can pay.
It's a complete dependence. Although it's still we have the scope, we have the illusion of independence sold to us because we just happen to be on top. But
all right, again,
I know.
Alan popping up. Money is not
again.
the same thing as currency. Currency changes. Money is the economic power.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, he's being technical, but
Yeah. No.
Okay, so I do have a question now, and really quickly. So with Alan bringing up that point about money not being the currency is really what kind of controls things because that's what currency is. It's not money in a sense.
Well, money's like the tangible.
Anything can become currency, right? Like if I have a phone and you have that beer, and I say, well, my phone, I want your beer for my phone. You want my phone? So that's currency. It's barter system,
that's
right?
money. You'd be using that as money. Oh,
that would be straight barter.
Well, it was never decided.
Okay, so then you just to end my question then
No, I can
with
answer
one
it.
more.
Go ahead.
If that's different, if barter and currency is different, then explain the difference between barter and currency in that situation.
Gotcha. Okay. So, all right, let's see. It was never fully decided by one person what was going to be money. It was kind of ultimately decided by all people simultaneously because money needed to be certain things. Money needed to be divisible. It needed to be something that you can divide into equal amounts so that you give someone something and it can be exchanged back. Things like leaves and shit like that. Not going to be money because, it's going to be hard to find a fucking leaf that's exactly the same. So things like metals became really good candidates because you can melt them and you can weigh them, and it's very easy to do that. And no one decided this. This is just, if I'm going to trade you something, this is what I'm going to trade for you because we know that it's going to be, it's going to withstand. You don't want to choose a metal that's going to erode, that while holding it, after time, it will actually be less than it was when you got it.
Especially,
Iron,
you start
things
with a
like
gram.
that. And now, it just erodes. So that's bad. Gold doesn't erode. Silver and other metals have these properties that are just make it good for money. Gold is used for other industrial applications as well.
Conducts electricity well.
Yeah, and so it was never decided upon formally, but we all decided that gold is what constituted money because it had these things. It's hard to just go get gold. If you want to get gold, you have to do a lot of digging and looking.
No one can seem to reproduce it.
So
either.
it's stable, which means tomorrow, the value of gold today is going to be pretty damn close to the value of gold tomorrow. So gold became money. So these are things that are money. These are things. Now, a long time ago, it's dangerous to just carry around your gold. So the people who are the goldsmiths, who you would press your gold that you found into a coin so that you can use it for trade, they would also provide you the service of storing your gold. And they'd put it in their secure vaults, and they became the bankers. And so people thought, oh, that's a great idea. I'm not going to get my throat slit for my sack of gold. I'll leave it with the banker, and what he's going to do is he's going to give me a little receipt that's redeemable for 1 ounce of gold. He's going to give me these receipts. And he's holding my gold. I have my receipts. If I come in with all my receipts, I get all my gold. That's the agreement. I mean, that's legit, right? We all agree on that.
Yeah.
If you're going to store my gold, when I come, it needs to be here. If you go and spend my gold and I come back with my receipts and you go, oh, I only got 2 pieces of gold for you, fuck you. You fucked with my property, which I was talking about earlier. You've stolen my property. You're a thief. But yeah, so they would give them the receipts, and everyone now is just walking around with receipts. And instead of me going to the bank and getting my gold, handing you my gold, you giving me the fucking pineapple or whatever the fuck you're buying, I'll just give you this receipt and you go down to the bank and you can get my gold. It's payable to whoever's holding this receipt. That receipt is currency.
But we're talking,
and that's the distinction between the two. A currency is a representation of money.
It's a representation of the gold.
But currency, I mean, if I turn around, and currency is basically the act of giving value to something, right?
The currency is the receipt.
Money,
it's a claim.
Money
is
money, and we give value to money, right? But currency, I could turn that pen into currency because if that pen holds value to me and to a certain other group of people, then that pen becomes currency. Same thing with the absolutely.
It has a value that's subject to the people that desire it.
Exactly, but isn't that the same?
No, value is different from currency.
Yeah, you're getting the
value has to do with prices.
In your example, the pen would be the money because people have value with the pen. So there's no money in the individual receipt unless people know that you can take this receipt
and they value
get the money. So the receipt is the currency, the money is the gold. In your example, you're saying you can use pens for currency, but you're actually saying if people value pins the same way they value gold,
right,
then the pins would become the money. you can trade with pins, or you can have something to represent your pins, which becomes
anything can be money. There's been all kinds of weird, crazy things that have represented money.
Wealth, just like completely fuck me up on this if I'm wrong, but isn't it like you're talking about like a receipt being more of like a wealth representation?
It's an IOU.
Yes,
right.
It is a claim for something, and it's signed to be authentic. So if you ever show up somewhere, you can get your money. You can get what it claims to say.
Prior to the 1913 Federal Reserve, dollars were silver certificates because you could take them to any bank and say, "Give me my silver." Now they're Federal Reserve notes,
which is a whole different thing. But I can get into that. It's a little more story if you're willing to let me talk.
Dowdy, we got any more inquiries on the old line there? Is there anything we didn't clear up earlier? I know we've been tangenting like crazy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't see the post right now, but there was someone talking about one thing that government did was good. It was renewable energy, the money they put in, backing that, trying to make that something. But also agreeing for a point that was they've spent too much money on everything else and spending it unwisely. And also Cristobal Carrillo said, "Is this a leprechaun themed podcast?" He just tuned in during the gold conversation.
Could be.
I would like to get into the fraud of it because I got into the meat of it, of talking about bankers and the gold. Now this is where the fraud comes in. Those bankers sat with a vault full of gold. Say 1,000 people came in with 1,000 pieces of gold, and they noticed that from day to day, because people were just trading papers around this currency. They call it currency because it flows like a current. And so this currency was getting circulated, and no more than about 10% of the gold was ever asked for on any given day.
90% of it was just going untouched.
90% is just growing dust. And as geniuses as they are, they work to scam up really quick to make that 1,000 pieces of gold 10% of 10,000 and print 10,000 receipts. And so if you print 10,000 receipts only holding 1,000 in gold, like 10%, and people only come in on any given day, ask for 10%, so you'll always have enough gold on hand, but you print these extra receipts that are claims to gold that doesn't exist, and then hand them out. And actually, you don't hand them out, you loan them out. Then you've got a pyramid scheme. And this has been perpetrated for a very long time.
Yeah,
and it's at a point where it's catastrophic financially, globally. It's gone out of control. And it's not even 10% anymore. It's down to like 2%.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, well, you're touching
less
on
than that.
Well, you're talking about fractional reserve banking.
Yes.
What he was saying was that with only 10% of the people who ever have gold at a bank only ever coming in to actually ask to get it removed, they wouldn't have any issue issuing out, receipts for gold that isn't there unless you have what's called a run on the banks, where a bunch of people hear, wait a minute, I hear that this bank
doesn't have all the
I got
gold.
Receipts to a bank that says that doesn't have gold in its vault. I better get there now and get whatever gold is in that vault into my hands, and then that's when you have the run on the banks with hundreds of people lining up, and the banks.
And that's why it takes faith in something until it collapses. That's why you can't predict when it can happen. It's when do people lose faith in the currency? But as the currency devalues, that day will come where you will lose faith in the fact that what you're holding is going to be worth the same or more the next day. And the day you believe that it's going to be worth less every single day, and it's called the flight into real value. And people go and they start buying things like land and all these other things, and prices go up in these markets. People dump their money, and then you have all this money floating around, and it's worthless every day. And every person who steps out of the system,
right? You buy when the stocks are low, and then you sell when they're high, because obviously you're going to make 10 times your value off that.
Well, imagine if nobody ran on the bank. Everyone would still get their money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once 1 or 2 or 3, then eventually, each person that pulls out of the system makes the system that much quicker to collapse. It's like a brick being pulled out of a wall, one at a time. And it's when that day happens. And it could be tomorrow. There could be something happens that financially that just tips the balance, and that's when it happens. Or it could be 20 years from now. But whether it will happen or not is not debatable.
So you're saying the history has proven itself. And I mean, obviously, if you look at the way that the banking system's gone over the last 10 years, I mean, we just talk about subprime. But but we're talking about subprime mortgages back in 2008.
Subprime is just another name for something that has always existed.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. We have our most recent example of that kind of a collapse.
That was
from
actually just a
2008.
bubble. That wasn't
But that
even
bubble burst.
That wasn't even economic collapse. That was just a market.
But that bubble, that bubble,
it's kind of the same. It's
on
the same
housing
concept.
market.
Yeah,
it's an inflation.
The scale is obviously much larger, but yes, yeah.
We're talking about, sometimes you blow a bubble and there's smaller bubbles attached to it.
Certainly.
Like, that's like one of the small bubbles attached to this big bubble that's just been waiting to burst. But it is like a bubble is the same thing as what I'm talking about because it's the same features. It's inflation of a market.
Yeah.
Right now it's the dollar. It's the inflation of the U.S. dollar.
And then you get people at the end of 2009 who have loans for $385,000 on a house that's worth $116,000, and it was worth $116,000 in 2002 until all that stuff.
It's hard for
happening.
people to understand how prices can change overnight.
Yeah.
And I think that's
yeah. And you know what, Dowdy? You just made me realize, Vic, that might be some of the reason that people are just not so unwilling to hear any of it, because it requires a pretty big foundation of a lot of different stuff, like you were talking about. Like, you kind of have to be, and you have to be willing to learn, number one, and you have to be willing to really learn a whole lot and throw yourself at a lot of information until you can kind of gather an image of what's actually happening based on a lot of history, a lot of evidence, and a lot of the people who've been saying a lot of this stuff, far before.
And
we
it's
were.
also like culturally we're lumped inside of like a category of people that are just on the do not listen to them.
Yeah, I mean,
you
that's
guys
not
sound
even
like you're
testing.
defending yourselves though
Well, we
more
have
than
to.
you're trying to teach people, and by saying that people won't get this because they haven't put the thought we have in it, you're
I'm
just knocked everyone.
No, I'm trying to, because I feel like the listeners have that same wall up, and I'm trying to say that it's expected in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we've already dealt with it so much that it becomes kind of the default position that you have to be ready to have people attack you based on pure emotion or fear, basically, is a lot of times.
A lot of people don't like to be told to read a book.
No.
And I think that's really what it comes down to. And yeah, it sucks because that's why it's so unreceptive. But honestly, it's a really good book. And it will change the way you see the world.
Well, that was your response to me as far as how can I do anything to fix anything. You told me just read that book.
Well, I said, yeah, change you
that I would just change.
Honestly,
not that I would change anything. That just me personally, I would get where you guys are, and I would just join.
No, it's
team
not
you
about
guys.
getting where you guys are. You'll have your own different experience, but you'll see the world colored differently.
Okay.
As everything you read does. Everything you learn colors your world differently. I mean, I just learned to weld for the first time just like 3 days ago. And it's fucking cool. And I never thought I would do that, But, I'm different having done that. And everything you learn changes your worldview.
So, every learning experience brings something new to you.
Yeah, and
right?
it always changes the way you look at the world.
Of course. And I fully agree. Now, let me ask another question, and kind of getting back to the beginning of the show tonight. Anarchist versus minarchist, right? Obviously, now I know.
No, Monarchy.
Minarchy.
No, I'm
versus
sorry.
Anarchy
Minarchy is the first menstrual period. Minarchy, the whole other show topic. Apparently, I spelled it wrong. My bad, everyone.
Touche.
Menarchy.
Menarchy versus. Yeah.
Minimal.
So, with that being said, now, say for example, it's over and it's done with, and all of a sudden everything's down, banks have fallen, cities are crumbled, and then all of a sudden now, because we've been, the one, I know the one thing, Kevin, that you've talked about over these last couple of shows is the use of force, and obviously the ownership of land, and how do you really decide, and I know, Vic, you brought it up at the beginning of the show when we talked about, or when you mentioned, land and how it's defined as far as, you having a lake on your property and everybody owns water. So let me ask this one very basic question. When it's all said and done and the chips are all on the ground, what between minarchy and anarchy, which one of those two systems, for lack of better terms, but which one of those two systems becomes the more prosperous in rebuilding a nation?
Yeah, well, that's hard to answer because it's like a social experiment that requires everyone to participate.
I'm just talking about based on your own ideas and principles and things that you formulate, because obviously you guys have both thought about this for a long time.
But that's not kind of what we do. We don't predict what would happen.
I'm asking for the purposes of the conversation, what would you, if there's pros and cons, if you guys want to throw out ideas for, both systems, say it's day one and let's use one or two or one of these systems or the other to rebuild. Like, what becomes the more prosperous, do you think?
I wondered this question because a minarchist is pretty much saying, well, an anarchist is saying, there should be no central government. Everybody should be free to do what they want.
Right.
If someone wants to walk around the city butt naked, that's his right to do that. Others of us are uncomfortable with that, and it's hard for us to tolerate things like that. And so we believe there should be some small, limited rules that we all, and that there's a central force that enforces them.
Right.
And we all agree that this force enforces these rules because I think that you walking around naked attacks me or violates me, and we start blurring the lines between damage. They've damaged me emotionally, or this or that, and then you say, well, he damaged me, my property, my mind. You know what I mean? And so you allow these things to happen, and that's why a government usually starts being used to enforce the will of people, in the sense that you're no longer caring that person has a right to do that. or you all just kind of, we don't want loud music anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then, and you can write these laws, but who's to tell me that I can't put my stereo at this volume? You know what I mean? I have rights. This is the land of the free. And so a minarchist is kind of like a government's kind of like a cop car, where if it's being driven by a virtuous cop who's arresting bad guys, great. If it's protecting your rights, then I'm all for government. Let's get that in there because that's great. But the truth is, it's like a police car that's been hijacked by a criminal.
No, and I get it.
He's got the appeal of a police officer and the trust, but all ill will and intention.
Alan
and that's
says,
where our government is, and participation in it is a violent act.
Alan says, anarchy is the most prosperous, and you can't walk around in a city naked if there is no city.
I agree on both points. Well, agree on the naked walking around in a city if it doesn't exist. I definitely get it. So, okay, but then aside from it being definitive as far as those two terms, because Alan said anarchy is the most prosperous. Now, Kevin.
I'll say this. Justice is a demand that people have. They have a demand to be made whole when damage is put upon them. Anarchists believe that the free market should take care of the needs of people. Now, the very first
there could
episode,
be third-party judges. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it comes down to contract law. You have a right to unlimited contract. That's entirely voluntary. I'm the kind of person who I do enjoy roads. I do enjoy fire protection. I enjoy the things that the government provides. I believe the free market can provide them at a much, much, much more efficient service.
We won't
and a
have
much
to
better
pay
rate.
this much taxes for a government to do something that the private sector could do way better. But we've just given that.
In the last couple episodes, we never really even touched on this aspect of it, which is kind of where the solutions start to come in. And to ask questions, a lot of times people are asking questions, how do we do things that we do now without government? And there's things that we do now with the government that are unnecessary entirely.
Look at the mail system. Like UPS kicks the government's mail's ass. Why do we still have a government mail system? You know what I mean? We could pay far less on employees if we got rid of the government and just relied on other private.
So that's certainly a big stance of anarchists, is that the free market, because it's voluntary, is moral, number one, and because the people who are providing the services to the customer have a direct incentive and a liability to the customer, because that's how they're being
the government
fed.
has zero liability.
Yeah, so the very first episode I talked about socialism and all these social programs. When there's a automatic funding source coming through, efficiency goes right to the fucking floor. So and
I'll say this: a lot of things that the anarchists say can be done with a third party, or I can see that being done way more efficiently with things that the government does. Things like a military or things like that are things that I would like a central government to be involved with. We should all be having a say in what we're doing to defend ourselves from other people. And that's where the minarchist position really differs, because the anarchist really doesn't have a good answer to how do you protect. And that's, I mean, you could say join private militias and stuff like that. People volunteer for these things, and you can do that. And there's some sort of accountability there. But I don't know. That even makes me feel uncomfortable thinking
Isn't
that.
there a justification for erecting some...
I mean, that's what the Constitution said to form militias. That's how we were supposed to solve that.
But that was kind of my next question. Isn't there a justification, even if you're an anarchist, isn't there a justification for wanting to, build up some sort of a defense to protect what you're trying to do?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
I mean, that's usually the first thing.
So that is generally a shared belief between anarchy and minarchy.
I would say it's a shared belief for every political ideology. Of course, I don't know anybody that don't. That
certainly, I'm only just focusing on these two right now.
Yeah, they definitely share that in common. It comes down to that line in the sand between voluntary and involuntary.
Right.
And as far as all these services now are being provided through taxation, through coercion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that is being provided for me that I enjoy, that I would voluntarily give my labor for. Right now, I'm giving about 4 months out of the year of my labor goes towards all the infrastructure and everything that this government does. And that's not just me. Everybody is in that exact same boat. About a third of your life is directly given to the state.
But here's the thing, all that money that's taken is put up for auction for every group or party that wants to get their person into place to spend it. And all it is we've been siphoned like a big fucking vacuum every year during our taxes. Actually, it's happening throughout the year. We just get back what they shouldn't have taken.
Yeah.
I like how people think refund is like you're getting money. No, you're just getting back because they took too much money. They're being kind.
It's like a robber dropped the DVD out after stealing all your stuff and was like, "Oh, I got a refund."
Sweet,
thanks, robber.
Sorry. But
Dowdy, did you?
Oh no, I was thinking we probably need to do sponsor stuff. And,
we can take a break.
Oh yeah, okay.
Take a quick break. I know I'm seeing things on the social media webs here. I know people want to get in. Maybe after the break.
Alan's hit some good points here. Back on the free market and the government, tracking numbers didn't exist until FedEx, a private company, brought that to the market. And then he said, anarchists do not want a lack of a social military. So I think he was touching on what I was touching. Is there's stuff that I enjoy that I would very voluntarily pay for.
Maybe we'll define the term social military.
All right, well, let's get all into this after the break. We're going to take a quickie. Come back. We'll go into this more. Feel free, again, pop in, call in, chat away as we're doing this. You yourself, go get your drinks, get some Riley's Brewing, do something. Get whatever you need to do this next part. We'll be back here. It's the Kick on Longbox.FM.
You're listening to The Kick on Longbox.FM.
The Dirty Dowdy Podcast on Longbox.FM.
You know about it, the Dirty Dowdy Podcast, the show that airs live every Wednesday night here on Longbox.FM from 7 to 9 o'clock. We bring in various guests, bands, musicians, comedians, anyone, everyone. We always have a good time. We always throw back to Riley's Brewing. We know how to have a lot of fun. Check out the show. If you haven't ever seen it before, you can easily find it. Go to iTunes. Go to our site. Go to Stitcher. There's many ways to see, listen, all that fun stuff. Also, check out our 360 videos. That's all up there on the website, longbox.fm. If you like interesting videos, you can go check out the 360, which gets you all the angles, all the views. You can check out our video podcast, our audio podcast. We do it all. We can get you on the show. All you have to do is hit us up, tell us that you want to get on the show, and we'll book a date for you. Remember, that's Wednesday night, live, the Dirty Dowdy Podcast. You'll be able to participate. You can call us, you can Skype us, you can chat us, all those fun things. You can be a part of the show as we do this rowdiness every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock here on Longbox.fm.
Longbox.fm.
All right, the Kick is back here in the Longbox.fm studios, brought to you, of course, and as always, by Riley's Brewing.
Thank you, Riley's.
Now, we've really handled a lot early as far as trying to establish foundation, right?
I think we did an all right job.
What is this music? Is this like space music?
Yeah, well, we're taking the deep here.
Getting woke.
No.
Now, we do have an addition on the mic, in a way, on the phone. Kevin, your brother Alan, who started this trilogy, he's on the phone now. You there?
Alan. Do I got to put it on speaker?
Boy, I hear you guys, but yeah, I don't think this will work. It's cool.
See, hit speaker on that there, Vic.
No, it's the way it needs to be.
Yeah, it sounds very difficult to hear. It's cool.
Bummer. All right, so basically, you said you had you said you were going to define something we were talking about earlier.
Wait, one moment. Can we try just hanging up and calling him back?
No, it's the connection on phone. Phone's always solid.
He did it for us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, keep going, Alan. You can call back.
Just watch it. Yeah, I'm sure he will. All right, hit us back up, Alan. So where were we when we left off? Or does anybody want to cover anything?
We were talking about money. I was talking about the fraud involved with the fractional reserve banking. And this is a fraud that's been perpetuated since Jesus, even before then. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know where you want to go with this, Kevin. I can go all into the Federal Reserve. I can dig that ditch.
That's a long.
It's a great one. It's a fucking masterful fraud.
It is. Okay, so let's. I know Dowdy wants to go on about or likes to talk about solutions, and I'm not against that, of course. I do think that we need something to look forward to. So probably already iterated this already, but solutions. How do you prepare for this?
Oh, like lifestyle changes?
I would say,
let's just say somebody's listening. It's the first time they've heard any of it.
I think you guys have a pretty set determination that it's going to happen. So maybe not solutions to prevent or soften the blow, but what happens afterwards?
We don't know. You're asking us to tell the future, man. That's all I can tell you is that it's gonna happen. B, it's never happened on this scale or scope.
The only thing that you're telling me that you're being really good at telling me right now is how bad everything's going to get and how we're all
I don't know
no matter
bad.
what.
I don't know how bad. This has never happened before. I mean, it's happened like this, but not to this magnitude, man. It's been building for about 200-something years.
So what do you do? And this is for both you, Vic, and for Kevin, too. So what do you guys see when you think about what it is you know, all the things that you've researched and all the time that you put into this, and you see the landscape of the land as it is right now, and you see everything the way it's coming down. When it actually all eventually hits, when all the shit hits the fan, how bad do you think it's going to get? Now, based on that's the first of a two-part question. One, how bad do you think it's going to get based on everything you know historically? And two, based on how bad you think it might get, how do we move forward from there?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at Greece. That's kind of a good example of kind of what's kind of we have to look forward to. There are going to be debts called in. They just literally went into people's bank accounts and took money out.
Yeah.
And they're going to do that. And that's not going to be... It seems crazy to think that you can just wake up tomorrow. But actually, that's what happens every day. But you don't recognize it because you don't understand fractional reserve banking. But yeah, you're asking for how would it look like, and it could happen tomorrow or 20 years from now. If it happened tomorrow, it'd probably be grim, maybe. I don't know. It depends on where it happens, where the crack breaks on the boat. If it's in a little spot and it takes a while for the boat to take on water, then maybe that's what it looks like. Or it could happen in a very bad place first, and we're sinking in 5 minutes. It's really hard to answer that question because it's like I told Chris, you're asking me to predict the future, and it can happen anywhere at any time, and it can happen to different magnitudes.
I don't want you to predict anything, Vic. Honestly, tonight, because I've been listening to you guys, and I have so many questions. But I think moreover, like what I wanted you guys to do in that two-part question is just
scenarios. What you
exactly
should do.
Like the hypothesis of
worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, make sure you have a gun and water. And worst case scenario, I don't personally think it's going to get that bad. I think. Oh, Alan's calling back.
Yeah, hit answer on that. We got you, Alan.
Hello.
You there?
I think it's.
Oh boy,
yeah, it's bad. Hey, we're gonna have to just pass on this, brother.
Or type it into the chat here, and I'll read it out.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, all right. I think he tacitly agrees.
Sorry, man.
And so, like, scenarios, worst case, gun and water, and have a secure place. I don't think it'll go that bad. Alan kind of believes that that's how it's going to happen. So and I tell him that there's different ways it could happen, man. It could happen slowly, and we can actually do something to try to toss some water out of the boat while it's taking on water. It's not going to stop it from sinking, but we can soften the blow, stretch it out. Sure. And that's just a depression. That's when things are shitty because you're just pumping out water out of the boat.
Yeah, it's all about survival.
Yeah. And it could happen a lot of ways, but the boat integrity is insolvent. You can't fix it.
Are we? I think we're making an attempt to reach Alan one more time here.
Oh, we are.
Yeah, we'll see if we can.
Hi, can you
hear? Is that better?
Hello.
Hello.
I can hear you guys.
So is it better? Is it better for you now?
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Is it better for you now?
Very good.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right.
I think there's a little delay on it.
You had some definition for us that we touched on earlier. Apparently, we jumbled up. Hit us with it.
This is for Alan.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's my turn. I can't really tell, but
hit it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's really hard to hear still. So I would rather kind of talk about that later if it comes up. I just kind of wanted to call in and talk to Chris, and I'll probably have to make it quick because I think it's kind of tough. And
hey, Alan, can we not get into this right now on this show? I told Chris, I said that's the last thing I wanted is to get into that tonight.
Well, if that's what you guys want.
I mean, we're doing this show tonight. Let him get his piece in.
Alan, what do you got, man?
Okay.
Let's go.
We're giving you the ready, set, go.
Well, no, it's just too difficult. I'd rather be there if we're going to talk about this. It's a long conversation, man. I just can't do this over the phone waiting for a bunch of delay and all that stuff. It's too difficult.
That's fine.
All right.
That's fine.
It's just going to annoy everybody.
Yeah, that's
all right.
What I had feared.
Then we will...
So, I mean, if you want to have me on the show, here I am. But if you want to talk about this, I guess I'll hang up.
If let's do it. If he wants to just speak his mind, let him speak his mind so we can get it out there.
Well, no, but he's talking about having an actual conversation. Now, this wouldn't be the time for that spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
But thank you, Alan. I'm sorry, brother.
I didn't get any of that. I didn't get anything else said.
All right. Love you.
Cool. All right. So, you had asked how bad do I see it, and where do we go from there? I do see it being very, very, very bad if people don't have any kind of preparation whatsoever. And I seriously mean like even a gallon of water and a gallon of gas kind of prep. And hopefully enough people can kind of get that together.
More than most.
More than most. If you're in a heavily populated area when basic services stop flowing because there's no money to pay the people to go to work, like when the dollar bottoms out entirely and there's no more currency flowing around. If you're in a city or heavy populated area, you're going to have a very bad time. By that time, there's probably been, FEMA and such has come in and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, there's government programs that are in place for this event, actually.
But considering the government track record...
They should be prepared for the worst. I mean, shit could happen.
Yeah, it shouldn't be...
We could be invaded,
It shouldn't be crazy to take the advice of having food and water and stuff on hand in case of an emergency. And to kind of get a lot of resistance for saying that.
I mean, look at New Orleans. I mean, a lot of stuff was just out for days. You know what I mean? And people were thirsty. No one had water. I mean,
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
probably a dated
say
reference.
Didn't they say it took 5 days for FEMA to get
Yeah.
water to the Superdome?
And just imagine if services stopped everywhere. You know what I mean? How long do you think it'll take for someone to bring something to you?
Yeah, so if it does get to a crash to that point where there is no more money to give to somebody,
There aren't even the resources, yeah.
Yeah, to go drive to work, to chop wood, or to do whatever people normally do. If nobody is there to pay you to do it, are you going to do it? Not unless it's for like just yourself, which means you're going out there and you're not turning on water for the whole city. But where do we go once it happens? Everyone wakes up and moves on. Everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs security and power and stuff.
Turns into a third world country.
Turns into a third world country for a little while, where people barter their skills for other people's services, and
a government is rebuilt,
or some kind of some kind of currency is agreed upon that we can use for trade, and
usually one very
start over
charismatic
again.
person rallies the support of large numbers of people and create a new government.
Hopefully information is allowed to exchange freely, that you learn from the mistakes of the last regime and don't repeat them and move forward. But I know at this point it is absolutely impossible to vote any of these issues away. You can't solve the problem with the same realm of thinking that created it, or the same mechanism that created it. You can't vote for freedom. It's what is that?
It's a
misnomer.
Oxymoron.
Oxymoron. There you go.
Yeah.
You don't vote for freedom. Like, yeah.
That's a good T-shirt.
And I know people say like that's not a solution and so forth. It's just not a pleasant one, unfortunately. I think we've hit a point now where we've been so used to a status quo and a way of living. We've actually been isolated by how humans have lived forever. We're the only ones with conditioned air in our homes. It's
we have just modern conveniences that would make 16th century kings fucking piss themselves if they could have.
Just deliciously. They would
By the way,
love it.
Can I interrupt real quick? Anybody who wants to try, call in 492-0450. Hopefully the phone's going to work better, but if you want to participate in this or comment again on the Facebook page or the YouTube page that we got going on, we'd love to hear you.
Yeah.
How do we sell it with more pep, Kevin? How do we erase the doom and gloom?
No,
I tried to.
Isn't that what we're always asking ourselves? Like, how do we get more people in on this?
You know what I mean? I'll tell you this. I have sold my house and went and looked at property up in Washington, and I'm currently in the process of financing a land purchase because I am wanting to be outside of the city on my own property when this event does take place, to whatever degree of magnitude. And even if it's not that bad and I get to live out quite a bit of my life there, that's just going to be great too. But
yeah, at least you got land, and
that's my plan. And so if I could give you advice, I'd say do that if it's within your means. It's going to be crazy. It's expensive, even though I'm willing to do all the work.
Are you guys talking about going to the point of we just all isolate each other from each other?
No, I'm building an insulation.
We're on our own. Like, you guys want to talk about who can vote on what, but no one. If not everyone's 100% on it, then it doesn't happen. So get your land, hold your own, just isolated little squares. Aren't you going the super millennial route, where now we're just trying to take our own? This is our safe spots. You can't encroach on it.
Well, you're only isolated as much as you have gates around your property where you sleep, but the people, the people who do this kind of things, the minarchists, the anarchists, they're the ones who, again, adhere to the free market and the virtues that it can produce. So it's not about closing yourself off to everybody. You actually open yourself up more to what people can do for you and what you can do for them.
Yeah.
But let me ask a question, because you said that you're only as closed off as your gates and your fences, right?
No man
as far
is
as an
island
isolationist go, yeah, exactly.
Well,
that's what I meant.
But doesn't what you're talking about? And this is where I really want to start to ask some questions, because it comes down to a mentality. It comes down to a fundamentality of it.
Definitely.
Right? So, aren't you, in a sense, already fundamentally isolated by the time this all happens? Before you even decide to put one fence post in the ground and start cordoning off your land, aren't you already fundamentally within yourself, psychologically and mentally, you are already isolated to a point?
Yeah.
As far as being an extreme minority at this point?
Yeah, you're in a minority group.
Yeah, definitely.
So belief-wise, you're already there.
But that's not by my choice. I'm actively trying to get more people to join my group. Basically.
I would say
so. I'm not trying to stop people from doing what I'm doing. I'm saying, hey,
I'm not trying to.
We're trying to actually lead the way.
I would say the only thing that Hillary Clinton has ever done or said that I liked was "It takes a village," right?
Village to
to raise a kid to
was that her saying?
I don't know. I don't call me out this. I'm not going to roll back the tape on this.
That was you just mean the saying itself.
Yeah,
Einstein.
There's a point where
Marilyn Monroe.
Community matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you have such isolationist views in what you're saying, because you're already saying that no one is going to listen to you. You were Victor, earlier tonight. You were saying how you sound like that crazy guy who's preaching Jesus on the soapbox. If what you're saying is so off-putting that you end up isolating yourself through your own message, aren't you getting away from that community thing? When everything crashes and burns, you're still the weird guy on the hill that no one trades with.
I'm trying to put anybody off. I don't think I've tried to insult anybody tonight.
But you haven't tried to incorporate anybody either.
Well, it's like one of those stories that aren't like participation stories. You can ask questions. But a lot of it is just information.
Yeah.
And
I would definitely say the isolationist is not the correct word because
that's one of those other labels we get put into.
Yeah,
that was Ron Paul. He was an isolationist.
It's kind of a rhetoric thing now. It's isolationist means that I would be on my land. I would put up 12-foot, 16-foot walls. I don't want to experience another human being for the rest of my life. I'd grow my own crop. I don't want to do that. I know my neighbors have value. Not for how can I take advantage of them, but they have the expertise in things that I don't, and I have expertise in things that they don't, and we can trade our skills and make our individual lives better for it. So that's the community. The community's an intangible object
of the free market, which is the promotion of networks of people communicating and working together. Like, we are for the thing that you're talking about, community. And we're not isolationists. We're the free market. We're for the free market. We're for people interacting with each other and being a part of that and benefiting from it. We have been the beneficiaries of the free market despite all the things that are done to stifle the free market from producing at its optimum.
Alan says the essence of anarchy is community development. And I would agree with that entirely. You need that community to protect your property, your individual property.
It wasn't the government that made our communities today. They were us. That was us.
Yeah.
But in retort to what he just said, because now it brings up another question. When you talk about anarchy as an overall, and most people have this view, right? And we'll just kind of dispel it through everything you guys have said tonight. Anarchy is more the free-for-all, where it's, almost an every man for himself situation in a sense, right? So how do you incorporate the term the word community into the definition of anarchy?
I'll ask you this right now. If there was no government tomorrow, would you wake up and kill somebody?
I was going to get to that, yeah. And it's just,
What did they do to me?
So why would anarchy immediately lead to chaos?
I'm not saying it leads to chaos. It's saying
every man for himself.
The common view is that it's a free for all. I'm not saying chaos. I'm not saying murder, death, and destruction.
But that's how it's painted,
right?
It's painted that way.
I'm gonna run over here now that this guy's gone. I'm gonna run over there and take his potatoes out of his patch.
But that's theft.
But what stops that is that guy having a weapon and protecting his property, which he is within his rights to do. And see, the society we live in isn't the product of the government. And most people, that's the difference. Like, in a lot of the thinking today, they see the world and they see it as a credit to the government. The truth is, we as people decided to live in these communities, build these cities. It wasn't the government that was involved. It wasn't the government that told us, hey, build your houses next to each other and form neighborhoods. It's just what we did. We are a social creature, and the government has been given way too much credit for what we do as human beings. We will have the civilization that we have today without a government because the government didn't make it.
But if you wanted to buy a plot of land and build a house, wouldn't you have to do it in a place where the government tells you have to do it? You can't just run out to the hills right now and build a house.
In some places you can. In Alaska you can because there's a lot of territory there.
But that's not an overarching.
But that's because
that's not an overarching overarching system for everybody.
That's one of the few states that still adheres to a law in the Constitution regarding where they actually had reverence for the idea of property. Where if you went and you put your man hours and your skill into a land, it by virtue becomes your property and what you can maintain.
Absolutely.
And
Neil Armstrong, plant the flag in the middle of the Alaskan
mountains. But the
mountains.
thing is, none of us own property. Everything that we buy is real estate. That's everything above the ground. The government owns every ground, and there are some places in Texas where you can buy actually the land and have the actual right to do things on your land and not have the government. But you need a allodial title, and you're not going to get that because that doesn't exist anymore. The government owns all of the land, which is why they can tell you what you can and cannot do on the land.
You pay property tax.
Which is also really just the king, which is also what we overthrew to form our government that had principles that were the antithesis to what we live in today. And if anything, we should just simply follow the Constitution if you want a solution. God damn, that rhymed. But that's it. Just follow our Constitution. That's your solution.
So wait. So we overthrew the king, or
we created it ourselves.
I was going to say we overthrew the king to create a new system of government that eventually became the bigger, badder version of the king.
Yeah. With the NSA.
Yeah. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and the people have allowed these things to slip out of their fingers, and that's why we are where we are today.
And if I can really quickly, the minarchist government was this very small government. In Washington, George Washington, our first president, back when we revered these things like property rights, he said, "Government is like a fire. It can keep you warm and cook your food, or it can burn your house down. And a government can only exist with fearful and God-fearing people, in essence, people with conscience." And it's been overrun. The police car has been captured by the criminal, and we have a crooked system.
Yeah. Going back to your anarchist question about the free for all, because it comes back to justice again. Anything that is a basic demand will be fulfilled by people. Justice will be something to compete for. And when somebody is trying to sell you justice, what they're selling you is their credibility. And they're selling you the history of how just they were. And right now, you just have a single-payer justice system, which is the government in this case, and debatable whether or not that is true justice.
Justice, yeah.
And if it's not, are there systems in place that you can change that justice system? And there are. On paper, but not entirely.
A lot of
At
things
least
are done
not
by
anymore.
arbitration.
Yeah.
Private third-party people who, when you enter an agreement, you state that this person, this entity will be the arbiter. And so you can have free market judges. You just, whenever you interact in business, you have contracts saying these will be the arbiters. You don't need a government. And in fact, the government's got a horrible record of actually issuing justice to big corporations and all these other people. Like, really, justice? I mean, our president can break the law, Richard Nixon, and they said, we can't, I know, we understand the rule of law, but we can't arrest the president. That's pretty much what they said. We understand that justice is supposed to be blind, but not the president.
Yeah, we just can't just do that.
Rule of law is justice is blind. It doesn't matter who you are.
I hear all of your statements being about it's the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all that, like the Bible, your religion. You have your 10 Commandments. You have there's this core base, and we should all just function as is. But there's a big gap between what happened 250 plus years ago and where we are now, and how do we get better? Mm-hmm. And you have to realize human nature current. There's got to be a way to work around it. You got to be able to look at the 10 Commandments and be able to look back and, there's some things that just, unfortunately, it's a part of society now. Just like you get married till you're dead. There's, some people say there's no gays. There's, you can have certain moments that you can hold on to and say, no, nothing can happen past that. Well, yes, but as a society, we've all gone past that. A consciousness that all agrees to this point, or at least accepts or gets to handles
the subjective viewpoint. That how do we?
So how do you deal with yourself without being so hardcore about these values that this is it, that's it, that we can't go anything outside of it? That's not going to help make anything better. That's not going to help anybody understand, because we all have this certain point now. We're all here.
It's like someone's sick and you say, you should take this pill. It's called, Tylenol. It'll make the headache go away. It'll make things a little bit better. And this is, how you can solve...
You're insulting me, man. You're telling me that me thinking about the world we're in right now is just me being so stupid to just take Tylenol. That's... And I'm representing, as we said in the start of the show, everybody else, right?
You're saying, how do we ever get back? Or are you saying that what was back there wasn't
I'm saying,
efficient?
When you guys talk about how you know that you're always being attacked for your views, how everything you guys say, you know that people look at you crazy, you have these hardcore core beliefs. And I'm saying from the other side of the spectrum going, yes, but we live in a certain society now, and we have to work with them. Unfortunately, in some cases, we have to work with them because we're all together.
Okay.
You can't just ignore anyone. You can't blow them off. You can't just be like, well, you're too stupid to get this, so fuck you, and I got my land. We good. There's got to be a working together to figure things out. There's got to be a little bit of letting go certain core values, because it was written in stone by Moses, apparently only 20,000
It's a misunderstanding of the problem by asking that question.
No, it's addressing knowing your audience, who your people are, to figure out how to work with them and understand where we are now, and then how do we make things better. It's too hardcore against... Like... You guys talk almost in the sense like you're the 99 against the 1%. We hear that a lot.
Kind of.
But you're also discriminating and shitting on the 99%.
No.
By saying you're the 1% of the 99.
No. I want to let you talk. I could go off. I have the response for Chris, but it's going to be long-winded if you have something.
No, I think you can probably cover it better than I could.
All
right. We talked about this, and... It's really, when you talk about economics, this falls into the realm of economics. So economics is a complex system of interdependencies. There are businesses and things and people who share things to other people. It's a very complex system. And it manages to do, and it runs optimum when left to its own devices, in the same way the human body does. Our body is a complex system of interdependencies. Our brain is kind of controlling a lot of stuff, deciding what gets what, and it's doing this without anybody telling the brain what to do. It's kind of just responding to the environment, and it's adjusting, and it's doing it at the most optimum ability, because nature is fucking super efficient, and that's the human body. And if you want to draw an analogy, it is as if we've decided that we can do better than nature, and say, I want to, so I can be stronger, produce this much more, testosterone, and we start fucking with chemicals in the body. But there are going to be consequences to that. And these travel through every system that's dependent on whatever system you're affecting, and it's complex. And no economics person can really tell you that they think they know exactly what's going to happen, but when you fuck with certain things, you can predict certain other things, just like a doctor can. And so what we have is a government that's in control of the human body and deciding which organs get what. And what you end up with is organs just dying because they're not getting enough, because we don't understand really what we're fucking with.
So he's making the analogy towards a centrally controlled
government, which protects. So now you have the liver, who's an interest group, and saying, hey, we need more resources. They're out for liver cells, and then the liver, if they get, sway in the brain, then if they can get control of that, it's kind of like a crazy fucked up human body where every system is just failing because there's just mismanagement, because we don't allow the free market or nature to actually do what it does. But we've existed, and we've made what technological breakthroughs we've made despite how much we fuck with it. And that's just a testament to the free market itself. Bubbles happen, organs fail, but we prop it back up, we get it to work somehow. And you're asking me, how do we solve this? And the problem is every organ's just fighting each other for resources, when it really, like, every organ can be thought of like the Democratic Party, you know what I mean? The Republican Party, the NRA. And then these are all these different organizations who are just lobbying for the most out of the body of our government that's put itself in charge of who gets what.
So how do we get the organs, right? In your analogy, how do we get the organs to stop fighting with each other? Well, and let me just expand on that really quickly. There is a common interest, right? Everybody has their own interests in what is going on in the central scope of the entire body in this analogy, right?
Yes.
So you have these organs. How do we get the organs to stop fighting with each other?
Got you right here. The organs are fighting with each other because there is a centrally controlled, we'll just say the brain, the heart, call it whatever organ you want. We'll use the brain.
Right.
So the brain is deciding now
who gets what.
And it's doing that based off of its own desires or its own manipulation. It's not
all
doing
the
it based
other organs agreed that we're going to make the brain in charge of who gets what.
So usually the brain would respond and deliver resources based on the stimuli that it's receiving from the external, the external stimuli from outside the body.
Okay.
And it would say, we need this, we need this, we need this. Now it's saying, I think we need this to the liver. I think we need this over here. I say we need this over here. And if we do this over here, it's going to boost this over here. The brain is doing this with regardless of the stimuli.
We're going to pass this law because it'll increase. Yeah.
It's the brain is making these decisions outside, not based on the stimuli of what's actually going on to the body. And the reason the organs are fighting each other is because the organs are saying, hey, I need more resources, and you need to give it to me because you're the only person who can, instead of just letting things get delivered naturally based on the stimulus that's happening outside the body. So the economy is the exact same way. There are infinite number of variables that are changing on a daily basis based on how many resources there are at any given moment in a market, where the demands are, what happened yesterday. Obviously, if a flood strikes, then more people are going to want water and blankets. There's all kinds of shit that just happens. It's absolutely impossible to predict this stuff, or for a central authority to be able to control the economy.
So Kevin, the brain is the problem. So the
brain shouldn't the brain shouldn't be given authority to decide what gets what.
Nobody should.
The body should be very limited.
Yeah, the body should only react to the stimulus that it's subject to.
It shouldn't be an auction
because it's already designed to do that. It's already designed to react to its stimulus and solve a problem and move forward.
I got to get this back to Chris, but this is the problem. You can't say, how do you solve the problem within voting to the brain? You know what I mean? How are we going to make the brain change everything? You can't get the answer from the brain. The brain needs to be able to not be the one you go to for answers. And so it's a really impossible question you're asking me. What do we do to get the government to change? And the thing is, the government needs to be changed. There shouldn't be a government that's deciding all these things that we have to lobby them for.
If I tell me if I'm wrong. You don't want government. You want zero government.
No. I want a very minimal government that is designed to protect my rights from other people.
What is that government?
That government is the Constitution. That's what was enumerated. It was a huge step in civilization to draft that.
You say this.
We threw off the shackle of thousands of years.
You guys have
kingdoms.
You have a lot of details on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Can you give me details on what that government is?
Yes. Okay, so we decided that in our government that there would be things that are rightfully ours, that we're endowed by our Creator. We are not just subjects of the king. Every person is a king. You have the same rights that a king has now. You have the right to own property, which nobody as a subject was able to own property. Everything was property of the king.
You're not telling me what this government is.
I am telling you. I'm telling you, it's a
takes
government.
Long in 2 sentences.
Yeah, it's a government that respects your property. If you own something, it's yours. Nobody can tell you what to do with it. You have rights. And we said that we have the right to speak. We have the right to say what we wanted to say. There's nobody who can tell me not to say something. You don't have that right. I get to do that. I don't have to ask anybody permission to say, fuck. And I have the right to my body to protect myself. If someone starts attacking me, there is nobody I need to ask for permission to defend myself. That's ludicrous. Every person has the right to defend themselves. That is a right. I don't have to ask permission. The moment I ask permission, it's a privilege. and somebody else has the right.
I'm sorry. I know you're passionate about this right now. That's not what I was asking.
But that's a government.
Your
a government
version
that
of government,
that.
like what? Who are the senators, the congressmen? Like, I'm talking about actual structure, actual thought out plan of what a government is.
It already happens. The Constitution.
So
laid it all that out, and we started with that, and we had that pretty damn close.
But it gets
for
perverted quickly.
It gets perverted quickly. That's the problem.
I get what Chris is asking.
You need a population that is always vigilant for liberty. You need a population that is always watching the people who are elected to be the authority at that time.
Yeah.
That's what you need. Your solution is every single person has to know this shit.
And the crazy thing is the institution has taken over the education.
That's the big problem right there.
And
that
is a hard barrier to get through.
Yeah. This is why
you have been taught by McDonald's.
This is why we fight this like an insane amount of rhetoric nonstop. We never ever actually get to this. Nobody ever asks us what the solution is, and when we say it, they don't want to hear it because it requires personal responsibility. You have your rights. That your rights require responsibility. You must know how to protect them. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, no. Finish your thought because I was actually going to say something pretty important right now. But this rests on the fact that for all the questions that me and Chris have, and I know that we're representing the lesser, we're representing the Morlocks. So
yeah,
right now that's all we are. We're just representing the Morlocks right now. But this Morlock, I guess, has just turned the corner because you said something that was absolutely appropriate. In my digging in this, trying to figure out what the solution was, you just said that the solution is everybody understanding this. Everybody understanding that you have to be vigilant enough to police your government.
Yes.
Yeah, you've given your rights to somebody else to dictate.
In this trilogy of a show that has taken its many twists and turns, I can say that I'm honestly coming to a point to where I am now getting the question answered. Like, the solution really is to be vigilant on your own government.
And I'll tell you right now, everything that we've been fighting for and everything that I've been researching and going for makes it worth it because of that. Because one other person got that veil lifted. And I know we always talk about the audience and stuff. And a lot of the people have been listening, of course, and they go back and listen to other shows.
I wouldn't even know what I know if it weren't for Kevin.
No. I appreciate that, yeah.
Okay.
And so for Kevin, fucking success. You can hang your hat and retire. Cheers to you. Although it's changed my life, but
Chris, what do you got?
I got nothing, man. I have a different way of thinking about things, and I'm not the smart one here. When we started the show, months before we started the show, I had ideas and thoughts about politics. I just got into them in March, so I'll tell anyone who's listening to The Kick, I started getting interested in March. So that means I'm a rookie. I'm an A-ball. I know nothing. But I have a view of how I want to do things, and I'm doing it with Longbox with certain aspects and different views outside of just the political here. I have a view of how to do things, and I think you don't have to bury other or drag their face through the dirt as you're speeding away in your car, holding out like Vin Diesel, like trying to kill the villain. I think there's a way to work things together. There are dumb people out there that, and I'm a bitter get off my lawn guy since 23. I subscribed early to this whole world. But we don't have to just shit on everybody. And every time we get in this conversation, you, me, Alan, Victor, anytime we're all hanging out, it inevitably comes to this. Like the pole, the northern pole of magnetics here. It's just so frustrating because it's like, so we're all fucked. And then when I talk, it's just like, okay, so I'm stupid too.
No.
I don't believe I'm stupid, but God, I'm trying to do some hope. The whole point of The Kick was to come up with ideas to do better, solutions, ideas to strive beyond what is bad.
But
and maybe not a nationwide thing, but on a central.
We got to paint the picture, though, before we come up with the solution. You have to identify the problem, certainly.
But I'll
say real quick.
I'm sorry, Alan says, what am I referring to? Apparently nothing, so...
No, I mean... I hope I don't sound offensive. I have not intentionally tried to offend anybody tonight or any group of people. I feel like I've simply stated the case Chris, you always degrade yourself and say you're an idiot or this and that.
Well, apparently I've helped tonight.
You're a very smart person, and I wouldn't keep you as company otherwise, and you know that. But this isn't a thing about intelligence. And that's what people, I think they get hung up on that. And they say, I know, but
it's
people
about
take it that way.
human nature and who you're working with.
Human nature and biologically, the human brain does not distinguish. The same chemical gets released when you see a threat and when you hear something that you disagree with. And people, when they hear me speak or Kevin, feel attacked. And it is a real thing to you. And you feel threatened. I am not trying to sound threatening, and I'm not trying to offend, but that's a real thing happening too.
And now you got Alan's back online. It's saying, referencing what you're saying, that's what he's talking about. Yes. I understand there's a chemical in my brain that's telling me that I'm threatened and I got to go shelter myself. I would think I'm beyond that to understand that I bring people into this show, this studio, this room, my house, week to week, whether DDP or the Kick, and I can handle conversation. I try to handle it with my views. Yes, I get emotional because we're talking about things that are emotional on the Kick. This is why we took a week off, because this is why it was hard. Because people come at you.
Yeah.
You're threatening, and maybe you think your way about certain things, but you throw down your way with your passion, and you think you're being good. But me, I'm hearing things going, whoa,
I could put down my bullhorn. I would readily admit that sometimes I get overzealous because I'm passionate about it. I wouldn't have learned as much as I learned if I didn't have, I'm like a music guy who just loves to talk about music, and I'm sorry if it's overbearing, and I don't want to offend anybody. Well, I just want to share my love of music. I'm
passive, and I'd like to say you guys are all right, and I lose. That's okay.
But yeah, don't take it as, I don't think you know shit about music. You know what I mean?
It's I've been hit in the face enough, and my view and where I want to go with things is I'm going to try to make things work with the people around me. And
I get you.
And if I'm wrong constantly in every conversation and every interaction in these long, weeks-long, drawn-out interactions that are driving me insane, I'm okay with being wrong because I'm going to do my thing.
I'll say this. Number one, Alan also said he is also a disciple of Kevin. I did wake him up to everything. They ran with it a lot harder and faster than I could, and that's where that spread comes in. You don't know
what you're going to
what you're going to get.
Somebody.
What's important is that other people freely choose to. That's the difference too. Is that we literally trying to enlighten people with some fact, something that they can relate to. But what I was going to say is that when you say the kind of stuff that Vic and I and Alan talk about, you're met with a lot of anger and a lot of resistance and a lot of rhetoric and a lot of propaganda, and all these things are just there. It's endless. It really is. And some people know they're doing it, and some people have no clue. And there's a whole range in between. Because of that, we've been through the grinder once or twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. We have been to the point where we can get spewed with character insult attacks. Not from you, I'm saying just when we're out here doing this stuff, we get the worst of it because everyone so far is being told that we're insane and so forth, media, blah, blah, blah. We have learned to put that shit aside for the most part and to not let any of that stuff affect us because we're trying to constantly push this message, which is based on history, based on logic, based on philosophy, based on a lot of things that nobody is really encouraged to understand anymore.
You guys are Vulcans.
Dude, we are fighting.
No, you guys, logically, this is all it is. You have refused human emotion or the ability to understand like where you're at, who you're
read
around.
Human Action. It's all about that. I mean, that's the book I tell you to read all the time. Human Action, Ludwig von Mises. It's a tough read. I would start with Frederick Bastiat.
It's
the
ultimate
law.
It is the ultimate compassion that we had that's required to carry this burden of information and to constantly slam our head up against the wall with so many people who don't want to hear it. Sometimes you get people who do, and God bless them, and God bless you, Ben. These are the tiny little bits of beacons of hope that we come across every once in a while. It is a compulsion when you know this kind of stuff and you see people around you that you love and don't want to see suffer, and you think to yourself, all they need is a spark of interest, and everything else will follow. You know, all the stuff I know wasn't taught by one person. I had to go out and research and follow and
there's all kinds of potholes and rabbit holes to fall into, and it's treacherous.
And after a couple of years of doing this, man, you get pretty damn good with your ability to think critically, your logic, deduction, all these things kind of get sharpened again. And you look around, you think, damn, if just a fraction of people around me were also kind of this aware, you know, a little bit able to think a little bit further than just a couple days ahead, you know, had a little bit of some...
It's not even that foresight. It's just you see the world differently because you have different concepts floating in your head.
Let me bring up a question from Amber early on in the show. At what point do you guys see yourself sounding like the college student telling the professor they're wrong?
I've always done that.
Yeah, but in our case, the professor was heavily leftist, so they were wrong.
Okay. Cool.
At what point do we see ourselves as that?
The mentor telling, or the teacher,
that.
or the student telling the mentor, "No, you're stupid. You're wrong. You don't get it."
I guess it depends what the mentor's saying.
No, here's the thing. It's like, how can all these other people be saying something completely different? The vast majority believe something different, and how could we be so right for the minority? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How could we think that we're smarter than the teacher? This 2%, this 1%, and the thing is, it's like asking, you know, it's. The government has taught you and has really inundated you. There's so much really to work through. I don't know how to say this, Kevin.
There's a lot of layers to peel back.
Yeah.
And the propaganda and the indoctrination starts at 5 years old, which is some of the most susceptible times to a brain.
There are interests like the financial industry, the Federal Reserve, the people who have been given the authority to print U.S. dollars and then loan it to our government at interest, and then create an income tax to use as collateral on the interest of the debt. That bank that has been created has a very vested interest in a very popular branch of economics called Keynesian economics.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really a struggle like Copernicus, where the Catholic Church has a vested interest in the Earth being the center of our solar system. And there is a small Copernican minority who are shouting that the sun is the center and that these theories are filled with vicious errors. And these are the Austrian economists, the foremost Austrian economist being Ludwig von Mises, who wrote the book. But even though he stood on the shoulders of probably two other economic geniuses before him, Friedrich Bastiat being another one in the 19th century, you can read these people's theories and they are solid. And if you understand, they're actually based on an entirely form of science called it's not coming to me.
I haven't read any of these. I haven't done this research.
Mm-hmm.
When the word comes to me,
I'm
a priori. Sorry,
I'm a lemming.
Okay, so
I just go about my life. What I have done is worked out a community here with people. I work out things. We're doing things, whether it be on the show. We were talking about money, value, trade. Riley sponsors us. They give us beer. We say their name. Yeah. We have sushi that comes in. We say their name.
Yeah. You've sold an engine.
Yes. I have learned to work with people. I'm working on the music community here in Fresno to try to work on things to make things better. I am uneducated, where you are clearly very educated. You can cite all of your references. I can't cite one. I can only cite Golden Rule.
I don't want to intimidate you, though. I mean,
you don't have to scare me.
But see, that's the thing. I'm not trying to intimidate. But you're taking
I'm
that
telling
as...
you, I don't give a shit about any book. I believe that where we live and how we live,
I was answering
you
that
gotta
question,
treat
and I was
people.
in the middle of it. I was answering the question to why do most people believe that the 98% are right and the 2% are wrong. And there is a very powerful organization who is very committed to keeping and perpetuating a scientific truth that is not. And that is this belief on Keynesian economics, where you can have banks fractionally reserve money in the belief that that is beneficial to society by increasing what's called credit credit increase.
Flow.
By increasing the amount of credit that's available, what you're doing is you're providing for future demand of money, which is a thing. But what's forgotten about is that this credit that's put into the system, this new chemical that we put into the body, is going to have other effects. And what it does is it increases prices, and the things are in the whole system. It favors other parts of the body more than the other, and the system starts to break down. And so it's not a real simple answer. I mean, there's vested interest in this theory to not be believed.
Entertain me, if you will, for a minute, and this is for both of you, because it's just now dawning on me that the first half of what we've addressed is, breaking down what is, the central banking system, and what is credit, what is money, what is currency, what is monarchy, anarchy, and all these other things, right?
Yeah.
The second half of it is addressing what we do in order to circumvent the problems that we experience now when we restart, right? For lack of better words, when we restart.
Yeah, how do we do it better?
But here's the thing. We talk about the understanding of all these different terms and terminology. And so in the end, don't we just turn around and say, fuck it, we don't do what we did before? Right?
But if you understood what you did before, you wouldn't do it. But people don't understand what actually happened. What happens is capital gets put as capitalism gets labeled over what happened before. And so the thing that is actually the solution becomes the thing that's denigrated. And this is what happened during the Great Depression. They blamed it on capitalism, when capitalism is actually what got us out of the Depression, and credit expansion is what put us into the Great Depression. And so what happens is there is a mislabeling, and it's intentional. And it's downright intentional by the bankers and people who have a vested interest to make capitalism seem like the vehicle that causes the destruction of society. Where what is actually true is that bankers being able to, like I said with the gold, put 10 times as much and do this fraud, being legally be able to do on a much more massive scale that's even far more just disgusting, is perpetuated. And that is actually the cause, and that is the antithesis to capitalism.
But can't we just all be Morlocks and say, hey, look, money is bad, let's not do this again?
But money isn't bad. But what we have isn't money anymore. What we have is we're all passing around IOUs.
Yeah.
They're promissory notes, and it's written on the dollar bill.
But we're all in one way or another giving value to something.
No, things have value, and we decide to use something to represent that value. What we've decided to use is something that is going to very quickly become useless because all it is paper, and it no longer actually is tied to something like gold. It is actually just tied to just faith in God at this point. We're no longer on a gold standard. We have become entirely fiat, which means that the only thing backing the dollar is more dollars. And if you go to a bank and there's not enough dollars...
But mind you, people's belief in the dollar, too.
Yeah, and like I said, that's like people when they make the run on the bank, they're like bricks.
I can turn around and put a dollar bill on the table.
You just touched on something huge, because it's the people's belief in the dollar that keeps it valuable. So there is a huge demand on the people who are using that dollar to rob the wealth to keep people believing the dollar is valuable. So all it takes is that faith. You just teach the faith. Now, you're talking about government schools because they teach pro-government, pro-statist propaganda. You're talking about media because they preach pro-statist government propaganda. You're talking about all movies, or mostly all movies.
And you're talking about the institutions that truly elect the people into the positions that they're in.
These are the ones who have the vested interest in keeping people believing that the system works.
Yeah, and the economics is bullocks.
Yeah,
and Austrian
so we can and not to say that the science and the research and all the time spent in looking into this and reading books and researching guys like Molyneux and following these videos and reading all the articles and everything that's out there, right? Can't we boil it down? How do we get this to a ground level? Because what Chris, I think, he left, but what I really wanted to touch on was basically, I think I know what he was alluding to, right?
You want the next step.
Not necessarily that.
I mean, like from here.
But the translation, right? There are going to be people that do the research. There are going to be people who read the books and read the articles and spend the thousands of hours that it takes to get to the point of knowledge that you guys have. However, how do you more quickly translate that to a generation of people?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
That's what we ask ourselves constantly.
Yeah.
So can
That
you
really
not,
is a
can you
question
not
of-
boil it down? I mean,
That's what the intent of this
get out
show
there
is
like
to be.
SJW style, and I hate to use that in the terms of you guys'
There are
beliefs,
people
but-
who are
but can't you get it out there
missionaries.
like SJW style and say, hey, look, fucking money is evil, or
Yeah.
the dollar is evil, and then just keep pumping it like that? Because people, the attention spans over the years have gotten shorter, right? Chris said he doesn't read books. He doesn't invest the time in reading books. And, you know, in a sense, there are a lot of millennials that really need to pick up on the message you guys, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, like Vanna, I know she's, you know, kind of sat in the background, but she represents the millennials, and she represents those cats who really need to hear this message and really need to wake up from this little Candy Crush induced like fog that's going on in their minds,
Beautifully
right?
put.
So how do we get this? How do we boil this down without losing its integrity? How do we boil this down and translate this to an entire generation of folks to make sure that they're ready for what happens next?
I would say immediately stop. Be very cautious on where you get your news from. I would cut out most news. Actually, I've actually completely severed myself from the news circuit.
Turn your television off.
Yeah, there are places where you can get news that is less biased, and that's the best I could say. But don't look at the news as a source or a source of information or legitimate information. And most people know this. You go, oh, well, Fox has this slant, and MSNBC has this slant, and the truth is somewhere in between. And the truth is nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Understand that you get kernels of actual certain things that, so there was a shooting here and there, you get that stuff. But anything about the government that's really detrimental to the government doesn't really get seen very often and gets marginalized. People who say things out against the government are easily turned into barbarians, or they're villainized by the media.
They're scapegoated to a sense.
And it's a game. It's almost like wrestling. It's all a show, and you get to watch Ed McMahon, not Ed McMahon, what's his name?
Vince McMahon.
Ed McMahon. That's a lot funnier. Vince McMahon come out, and they do the whole acting before the thing, and that's all I see news and politicians when they're on. They're just actors like wrestlers, and it's just a very elaborate show for people, and people like wrestling, people like government, and they stay interested in that, and you could be very knowledgeable about that and know all the things that are happening within that arena, that theater. But it's still just theater to me, and I wouldn't spend too much time. That's why I don't talk about topical things.
Yeah. I'll say this, and then I'm 24 minutes now past due, so I gotta bounce. But the solution, the way I see it, like you're saying, is really getting other people educated in the material. You can't force them. You can't force anyone to learn. So all you could do is try to give them enough material that something sparks and starts a fire inside of them. I'm telling anybody who's listening, all it takes is that tiny little bit of willpower to go research, and you'll find it, because it's there. It just is. The information's there. There's just so goddamn much of it. So it's not,
and it's not outside of anybody's ability to understand,
to comprehend.
grasp.
Yeah, it's just so very much. From there, I can't tell you what to do. Hopefully, people will understand that it's important enough that they would like their family and their friends to know. And if everyone feels that way, then it would get taken care of overnight.
Yeah, we hardly know what to do.
Yeah, I just know that there's a problem. I know that we're on a ship and it's sinking. So I'm kind of screaming.
I mean, I fully agree with you. I mean, there's so much information out there, and I know that, Chris, despite the fact that he's very get off my lawn, and, I mean, there's a lot of different things going on in this world. We live in a very stressful time, and I think there's so much information out there that you can really count a lot of information as misinformation. And so, well, I guess like when I presented the question, and I'll now actually I'll term it, how do you doubtify everything that you know, because you missed it when you were on the break or when you were out of the room, Chris. I asked, how do you boil everything down to make it understand?
That's right.
The whole tower collapses of all your previous self. Like, everything you used to think collapses, and you're stuck mentally having to rebuild your.
But see, here's the thing, Vic, and I appreciate what
you're
you're
asking.
saying.
How do we make the message boiled down to where people can understand this?
How do we get the message to 9 words or less, like a campaign slogan or an advertising slogan?
That's
what's always
what
expected. Yeah, that's always what's expected, but it's impossible.
You can't. It's like asking someone to explain calculus in the form of like a hand puppet and shapes. You can't. There's too much there. And it's not that the message is too intense. It's just that for something that is so important, to expect it to be done in 10 seconds or less it's insane. You can't do it. Like we kind of gave a boiled down version. It took us 2.5 hours. I do have to say though that I do got to bounce. This isn't my last show on the Kick, but it will be more periodic for me. Back and forth. I'll be on here and there, and we sat down Saturday and had a nice little chat with everybody, and it actually went really damn well. And I was happy to do that, and things are certainly better because of it. But yeah, I got to still wake up at 5 a.m., which is a real pain in the ass. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Guys, continue.
Well, I'm done.
Oh.
I want to say thank you, Kevin, Chris, Ben, for the conversation tonight, and Chris, the opportunity to send this message to whatever audience stayed on for as long as they did. I don't know how we did, if everyone bounced out, but hopefully try to make this engaging and entertaining. Keep it on topic.
I'll just say this real quick because I know Chris wants to finish this out. Thank you, Kevin. I know our conversation that we had the other day, I mean, obviously we went into a great detail on a lot of different things, but I'm glad I was here tonight. I'm glad I got a chance to learn. I actually am glad that I came to my own self-epiphany over, some of the stuff that, you guys are talking about and been preaching on for, I hate that word, but for the last couple of weeks. But it was educational, if nothing else, and I really want to thank you for that. And, it's going to be periodic for you from here on out, man. Don't be a fucking stranger, man.
No, I'll be around.
Been great.
Practically live here.
All right. Well, I guess we're in it. It's the Kick. It's here on Longbox.FM. We do this every Monday night. Not necessarily this, but we do this. We challenge things every Monday night. At least that's one consistent, is we challenge thought. We got one coming up on Thursday. Also, Wednesday night, Dirty Daddy Podcast with Kevin. We'll be back.
Yep.
And we got Brianna Banks.
Somebody.
Just search your search browser.
Not at work. Don't do it at work. Do it at home in the bathroom.
You know her. You know what it is. But that's what we're doing. So it's the Kick tonight. Kevin, thanks for hanging out as long as you have. This show is hard. And
yeah,
it's brutal, man. It's rough.
Yeah,
tumble.
As much fun
I wish
as
we could have made it more jokes, and I know.
No,
I wanted it.
No, to the Kick on Longbox.FM.
Gotta go.
The Kick aren't necessarily those of staff, management, or sponsors. The Kick is written and produced by Chris Dowdy and is a presentation of Longbox.FM.
Be